Hello, my name is Jack, and I want to tell you about fortitude and optimism. I lived a pretty ordinary life until I turned 12. I studied at school, I was a drummer in the local group, I had a lot of friends, and I never had any illness that was worse than the regular flu. But everything changed very suddenly when my parents let me go to a rock concert for the first time. That evening, my grandfather picked me up to drive me to the spot. But we never made it to the venue. On the way to the concert, my gran had a heart attack and we crashed into a pole. When I came to my senses, I was at the hospital with my parents sitting in front of me. The first thing I asked them was, "How's Gran?" They hesitated. Tears appeared in Mom's eyes. I realized that he was gone and asked my parents to tell me the truth. Then my dad said he died instantly. I was shocked to hear this. I mean, he was there just then, and now he was gone. We were supposed to go fishing next Friday. It was very hard to cope with the truth. Then, parents asked me how I was feeling. Surprisingly, I felt pretty normal, but when I tried to get up, I felt pain in my right forearm. I looked down and saw that I was missing a hand. My parents said that my hand was destroyed in a crash, and there was no way the doctors could save it. I was immediately horrified. I had no idea how I was gonna live with only one hand, but my parents helped me to pull myself together and not become depressed. They did all they could to cheer me up. There was a guy in my room who fell and lost both of his legs. Once, when I was having a particularly bad day, he said to me, "Hey Jack, look at me. I'm a former football player and I lost both legs. And you only lost one hand. That's the way life goes sometimes. It's important that you follow your dreams, man." After I heard those words, I thought, he's right, things could definitely be worse. But now that I lost my hand, I didn't know what my dreams were. So I set myself on the quest of finding my dream. I spent about a month at a hospital, another month at home, and during this time I realized that apart from my hand, I lost more than half of my friends. Many of them were afraid of me, and now avoided spending time with me. It was very disappointing because I actually counted on their support. Over time, I tried to turn my thoughts around and figured it was good to know who my real friends were. My real buddies were actually there to help. Learning to do things with only one hand was difficult for me, but eventually I started to get used to it. But even though I was constantly progressing, I was still very clumsy and terribly angry that I had to ask my parents for help to do basic things like cutting bread or tying my shoes. I had to quit drumming and going to school. I started homeschooling. I missed spending time with my friends because now I couldn't see them very often. Every night I had dreams in which I had both in my hands. I played drums and went to school just like all my friends. And when I woke up and saw what was left of my right hand, I would begin to cry. But after a few months, I started to get used to my new life. Of course, nobody can turn back time. Doctors suggested that I install cosmetic prosthesis. I immediately agreed, and my parents supported me in this. They got me a new hand about a month later. I was happy, like a child gets happy when he sees a new toy. But my joy quickly gave way to irritation. Yes, it looked totally similar to the real one, but it turned out to be absolutely useless, and it only interfered with my everyday life. The fact is that cosmetic prosthesis cannot be used like a real hand. It's a kind of accessory for appearance sake. So I soon refused to use it because it wasn't convenient at all. It had not lived up to my expectations. So after that, they put me on the waiting list for a hand transplant. This would be my last hope to return to a normal life. I thought about this for a long time, but agreed in the end. Doctors immediately warned me that I should prepare for a long fight because after a transplant, my new hand will have to adapt. So I had a dream, a transplanted hand, to replace the one that I lost. I didn't know this was possible. On my 15th birthday, we gathered a friendly crowd. My parents, my grandma, and my friends. I was happy they were paying attention to my troubles. Then I blew out the candles and wished for a new hand. In the evening, after all the guests had left, a call came from a clinic informing me that they were ready to transplant my hand that evening. I could barely believe it. My wish had come true. I yelled with joy. A few hours later, I was taken to the operating room. I was scared and wanted it to be over quickly. It was a long and complicated operation, but fortunately, it was a successful one. At least that's what doctors said. Then, a long and difficult recovery period began. The new hand, like the cosmetic prosthesis, constantly interfered and didn't do what I wanted it to. But unlike the prosthesis, it was impossible to put it on a shelf in my closet. Therefore, the only way out was the struggle. I had to learn to control my new hand, or I could give up and wallow in self-pity for the rest of my life. I admit, sometimes I regret my decisions. This would normally happen when my new hand disobeyed me. For example, one time it threw a remote control at the TV and smashed it. Or like one time it grabbed a hot pan. At times like these, I wanted to get rid of it. I was kind of afraid of it. Luckily, these incidents stopped after the first month following the transplant. Doctors assured me that eventually everything would work out. I just needed to be patient. In their experience, it could take up to 5 years for a transplant to fully become a part of my body. This information was both encouraging and scary. I'm ready to wait 5 years if I have to. I dream of playing the drums again and going back to school, but for now, these are just dreams. Every failure I make when trying to do something with my right hand is a step away from these dreams. When this happens, it's hard for me to avoid falling into despair and giving up. Although I perfectly understand that both patience and stability are very important in my situation. 10 months have passed since I had a transplant. A few days ago, I could use that thing to wave my friends goodbye. This brought tears of happiness to all of our eyes. Yesterday, for the first time, I managed to grab a spoon. I could only hold it for a few seconds, but this was a huge achievement for me. I won't give up, and I hope that new successes await for me, and that in the near future my hand will start to feel natural. I've realized that the most important thing is my mood. When I don't get discouraged and work patiently towards my goals, my successes don't keep me waiting long. What about you guys? Have you ever had to start your life from scratch? Share your struggles in the comments.